In this quick video, I'm going to take you through the supplemental document for the Normative Reference Values for FEES and VASES article that we published on. This is a supplemental document that covers the preliminary data from 39 nondysphagic community dwelling adults. And the idea here is that it's going to provide reference values to which you can compare your FEES results to a kind of set of quote-unquote healthy adults. I'll take you quickly through this document so you can orient yourselves and know how to use it in your own clinical and research practices. So on this first page, we can see an outline of the demographic information of the 39 healthy adults that were recruited for this study, and you can make comparisons to see how similar or dissimilar this group is to the patients that are in front of you. We scroll down and we look at the various functional swelling outcomes that were included in this study that were analyzed using the VASES methodology. And so we can see kind of a description of how residue ratings are made. We can see a description of the penetration aspiration scale. We have a description of how we used bolus location at swallow onset, and ultimately kind of a guide on how you might go about interpreting some of the data in this study. So I encourage you to kind of read through these first few pages. On this page, we're looking at the protocol that was actually used here, including the camera, the use of anesthetics and lubrication and decongestants. We can also see a description of the specific swallow instructions that were used as part of this protocol. As you likely know, swallow instructions can influence swallowing outcomes, and so I would pay careful attention to the swallow instructions that we were used, so you know how closely this will match your comparisons that are being made. So here we have a collection of swallow conditions that were used in this study. There were essentially 15 swallow conditions that you can reference in this study. Most of these swallow conditions were repeated with two different colors if it was a liquid. So specifically, the self-selected volume, the 5 ml, 10 ml, 20 ml, and self-selected volume, kind of the second time. These are all repeated once with the green opaque water and once with the heavily concentrated white dyed water. The latter being something that has a big coating effect and the former having a very little coating effect. The 90 ml thin liquid was repeated just once with the white dyed water. The pudding was repeated twice, but both with a blue color, and then we have a saltine cracker that was repeated twice, but with no color. So in essence, we have 15 swallow conditions. Each of these is embedded with a link that'll take you to the document so you can look at the specific reference values for that specific condition. This very first bullet point is just kind of a summary of findings across the entire protocol. It's there to kind of give you a gestalt impression of the findings. But what I would encourage you as a clinician or researcher to do is to identify what condition is it that you are using in your protocol. It can be one of these, it could be all of these. And then identify that swallow condition of interest, click on this link, and then make comparisons to that specific condition. So for example, let's say you looked at a self-selected volume of water via cup, then you would click on this link, and it would bring you straight to the results of that swallow condition. You can see for these liquids, as I previously mentioned, most of these liquids were repeated twice, once with the green opaque water. And so the idea here is that it's an opaque water that's been dyed green with a couple drops of white dye so that it becomes opaque rather than clear or translucent. And then it was also repeated with a white coating water or a heavily concentrated white dyed water. The idea here is that we're getting a maximal coating effect, which we found in previous research to be very important for identifying swallowing impairments, especially in people with more mild swallow changes. Below that, you can see the number of swallows that are analyzed as part of this. So each patient or a volunteer was given each condition once in this example, and so there's one swallow trial per person, and there were 39 people total, right? On the leftmost column, we see the outcome measures to which you can make a comparison. Now for these self-selected volumes, we also recorded the sip size or the bite size that was taken, and you can see the means and the standard deviations, the median, the 25th percentile, and the 75th percentile, remaining percentiles, as well as the total range, the min and the maximum. So for example, let's say we were interested in comparing a self-selected volume of water via cup with a natural swallow, so just drink this like you normally would. We can see for that, with a white coating water, the median sip size was around 20 milliliters, with most people between 14 to 26 milliliters. We can also see that for this condition, that 24 of the people completed this within a single swallow. 12 of the 39 people completed this task with 2 swallows, and 3 of the 39 people completed this task within 3 swallows. Then we look at our bolus location at swallow onset measures. So again, I encourage you to kind of go back to the first or second page and see a description of that. But essentially, bolus location at swallow onset was only rated if we visibly saw the pharynx at the onset of the during the swallow phase as defined by VASES. If we got visualization of the pharynx and we did not see any bolus in the pharynx at the onset of the during the swallow phase, then we indicated that the bolus was only in the oral cavity and was not in the pharynx. So oral cavity only. So in this condition, for a self-selected volume of white coating water, of the 39 adults or trials that were recorded, 66% of the time, or 26 of the trials, there was never bolus seen in the pharynx. So it was in the pharynx 11 times, and 2 of the times we didn't obtain visualization. We go further down, and for each of these anatomic landmarks, we would indicate if something was present when we did see it in the pharynx. So it wasn't just about the lowest, it was about any anatomic landmark that we saw. So someone might have had bolus in the oral pharynx, as well as in the hypopharynx, as well as on the epiglottis. That was certainly possible. So we just marked if it was present on each structure or not when we did see it in the pharynx. We scroll to the next page, and here we have findings related to residue ratings. And so for each of these residue ratings, what we did for these norms, we broke it down 2 ways. We first indicated if residue was present or absent on each structure, and if it was present, then we indicated the amount. So notably, the amount when present is the amount of residue that was calculated without including any 0 percentages. So, for example, if we look at the white coating water of the 39 trials, none of the times was there residue absent in the oral pharynx. We always saw something in the oral pharynx, and so we said it was present 100% of the times during 39 people. When it was present, the median amount of residue was 2%, with it typically ranging from just about 1.5 to 2%. But we did get a range of 1 to 23%, so a pretty big range, but the vast majority of people were kind of clustered in this 1 to 2% range, so a very small amount. We have similar findings with the hypopharynx, with very little, actually it was never absent in the hypopharynx. Every single time we did document some amount of residue being present in the hypopharynx with this white dyed water. And here we see that it typically, the median residue rating was 1.5% out of 100, with it typically ranging from 1 to 2%. We go down and look at the epiglottis. We can see that it was absent in 5.1% of trials, and it was present in the remaining 94.9% of trials. And when it was present, the amount of residue that we saw in the epiglottis was 3%, typically ranging from 1.5 to 5%. Here we're looking at laryngeal vestibule residue, which is essentially penetration, and we see that penetration into the vestibule was absent for 66% of trials, or 26 of the 39. We also see that it was present for 33% of trials, or 13 of the 39 trials. When it was present, it was typically a small amount of about 2.5%. So this is telling us that in about a third of the instances in this group of people, when they drank a white coating water, we did see penetration, but the amount that was in the vestibule was a very small amount. It was 2.5%. We also saw that of the 39 people who had the white coating water, there was no residue on the vocal folds for about 92% of trials, but for about 7% of trials, we did see stuff on the vocal folds. It was present. And when it was present, it was again a very small amount, about 2%. In none of these trials did we see aspiration for this natural self-selected volume of white coating water, and therefore we have no findings related to aspiration. And then lastly, here we're looking at penetration aspiration scale scores. As you know, the PAS ranges from 1 to 8, and here we have a breakdown of those scores. You could then scroll back up to the beginning of the document, find the swallow condition of interest, and then rinse and repeat. So you might be interested in looking at 5 ml of blue pudding via spoon, single swallow. Click on that link, and here we only have one column because the only thing that was presented was pudding with blue dyed in it, and the pudding was presented twice, and that's why we have a sample size of 77. You'll also notice we don't have sip size or bite size because all patients were given the same 5 ml and asked to do it in a single swallow. But we did mark the number of swallows that they completed regardless of the fact that it was a single swallow cue. And so we can see here 83% of the times patients completed this within the single swallow as asked. About 15% of the time they still completed it in 2 swallows despite it being a single swallow instruction. And in one instance, a patient completed this in 3 swallows despite it being a single swallow instruction. And here we can go through the same kind of outcome measures. So we can look at bolus location at swallow onset. Was it in the oral cavity only? If yes, great. If not, then we look at bolus location at swallow onset for all the other anatomic structures. Then we have our oral pharyngeal residue, present and absent, and when present, how much? Hypopharynx, present, absent, and when present, how much? Epiglottis, present, absent, when present, how much? Laryngeal vestibule, present, absent, when present, how much? And then same thing with vocal fold residue, subglottic residue, and penetration aspiration. All right, I hope this helps you, and I welcome any questions and wish you the best. All right, take care. Bye-bye.